The captive with no name. Smoke still filled the sky. The battle had ended only hours ago. The ground was wet with blood, both alien and human. The dead were silent now, but the pain still screamed in the hearts of the survivors. Among the ruins of a broken alien fortress, human soldiers found her. She was on her knees. Her skin was pale blue, smeared with dust and ash. Her eyes were wide, but empty. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. Her hands were tied behind her back with thick, metal cords. "She's a beauty," one soldier said, nudging her with his boot. "High-value spoil," another laughed. "Maybe the general will keep her." "No," said the captain. "She goes to the wounded unit. One of the lieutenants is still healing. Let him have her." They tossed her into a transport like luggage. She didn't fight. She didn't blink. It was like her soul had already left her body. The camp smelled of medicine and burnt fuel. Lieutenant Elias Ward sat in silence. His leg was wrapped in bandages. He'd taken a plasma blast during the last charge. Most men were still recovering, both in body and mind. That evening, they brought her in. "She's yours now." The guard smirked. "Spoils of war. Congratulations." Elias didn't answer. He only looked up from his cot. The alien woman stood. There, silent, barefoot, her wrists still bound, her clothes were torn. Her body was thin. But her eyes held a deep, quiet fire. "Untie her," Elias said, his voice cold. "What?" "I said untie her." The guard laughed but obeyed. The cords fell. The woman didn't move. "Sit," Elias said, pointing to a corner of the tent. She sat. That night, she waited. She had heard stories about what humans did to captives. She expected pain, hunger, humiliation, but the man didn't come near her. He didn't touch her. He didn't even speak again. She watched him from the corner. He grimaced from pain, groaned in his sleep. But even in his suffering, he never looked at her with hunger in his eyes. Later, he tossed a blanket toward her. "For you," he said simply. She didn't touch it at first. It might be a trick. But the cold was too sharp. Slowly, she pulled it around her shoulders. It was the first warmth she had felt in days. Days passed, she didn't speak. He didn't ask. He ate simple rations. Sometimes he offered her half. She took it, her fingers shaking. Once she tried to escape. She waited until night, crept through the tent flap, and ran. She made it halfway across the camp when a patrol spotted her. "Running away, huh?" a soldier sneered, grabbing her arm. They were dragging her back when Elias arrived, leaning on his cane. "She's with me," he said firmly. "Let her go." "Then keep her locked," one guard spat. "She doesn't belong to herself anymore." Elias didn't answer. He helped her walk back. She didn't look at him. She felt shame. She expected punishment. Instead, he said, "You're not a prisoner." She looked up, confused. "I won't chain you. You can leave if you want. But it's dangerous out there." She didn't leave again. One morning, she brought him water without being asked. He looked surprised. She set it down quietly and returned to her corner. "You have a name?" he asked. She didn't respond. He tried again. "Name?" She hesitated, then touched her chest lightly. "Shari." He nodded. "Shari, I'm Elias." She repeated. "As." It was the first word they shared. Other soldiers visited. They laughed at Elias. "You're not even using your prize? What a waste." Elias glared at them. "She's not a prize." "Oh, come on, what else is she good for?" He stood, even with his limp. "Get out." The tent was quiet after that. Shari looked at him differently now. Not with fear, not with confusion, but with something else. Something fragile. One night, rain hit the roof of the tent. She sat close to the heater. He winced in pain from his leg. She moved. Slowly. Quietly. She brought him his medicine. He blinked in surprise. "You don't have to," he said. She tilted her head. "You not hurt me?" "No," he said. I won't. Others did. His eyes darkened. I know. She reached for his hand, but didn't touch. Just hovered close, he didn't pull away. They sat like that in silence while the storm whispered outside. In the camp, they still called her spoils of war. But in Elias's tent, she was just Shari. And for the first time since the war began, she started to feel like a person again. The man who didn't touch her. Elias Ward was known for two things: silence and scars. He had survived 3 battles, lost his brother in the second, and nearly died in the third. His body was full of pain, but his eyes carried something deeper: tiredness. Everyone thought he'd take the alien woman like a beast. That's what most soldiers did. That's what the rules allowed. But Elias wasn't like them. He hadn't asked for a captive. He hadn't asked for anyone. Yet Shari now shared his space, quiet, thin, and confused. Shari watched Elias from her corner. He was strange. He limped when he walked, his face always tight with pain. But his voice was calm. His words were soft when he used them. Every morning he left her a small piece of bread and clean water. He never looked her in the eye when he gave it. One day she whispered, "Why?" He looked up. "Why what?" "Why? You kind?" He blinked, then looked away. "Because you're not a thing." Shari didn't understand everything, but those words stayed in her mind like a warm flame. Later that day, 2 drunk soldiers entered the tent. They smelled like sour meat and smoke. "Elias," one of them laughed. "Still not claimed your prize?" "She just sits here. Don't tell me you're scared of her." Elias stood slowly. His leg trembled. His cane pressed into the ground. But his voice didn't shake. "Leave." The other soldier stepped closer to Shari, smirking. "Maybe we should borrow her for a—" He didn't finish the sentence. Elias slammed the butt of his cane into the man's gut. He dropped with a grunt. "You ever touch her again?" Elias said coldly. "I'll break your jaw." The tent was silent. Then the 2 men left, grumbling and bruised. Shari stared at him. She had seen many humans. Most were cruel. Some were worse. But this one, he fought for her, hurt himself for her. She moved closer that night, just a little. Not touching, but near. Elias didn't speak. He just handed her a thicker blanket. The next morning, Elias tried to stand, but his leg gave out. He hit the ground hard. His face twisted in pain. Shari rushed to him, fear in her eyes. "You hurt?" "I'm fine," he groaned, teeth clenched. She ignored his words and fetched his medicine, fumbling with the small bottle. His hand touched hers by accident. Both paused. Neither moved away. After that day, things changed. Shari helped him more. Small things. Pouring water, boiling soup, cleaning his bandages. Elias didn't stop her. Sometimes he even smiled. It was the kind of smile that was rare, soft, and real. "Thank you," he said once. Shari tilted her head. "What mean?" "Thank you." He touched his chest. "Good. You did good." She repeated the words. "Thank you." Their eyes met. Something silent passed between them. Not fear. Not pity. Trust. At night, she began to hum to herself. A soft tune, sad but beautiful. Elias listened without speaking. It reminded him of his mother's voice from long ago, of better days. He didn't tell her to stop, he never would. One evening, Elias found a small piece of old cloth in his supplies. He stitched it into a scarf. It was rough, not perfect, but warm. He offered it to her the next morning. Shari took it slowly, eyes wide. "You give this to me?" "Yes," he said. "Cold season is coming." She held it tightly. "No one ever give me anything." Elias looked away. Then they were fools. She wore it every day, not just for the warmth, but because someone had seen her, not as a prize, not as a prisoner, but as a person. At night, she began sitting closer. Sometimes she even spoke first. "Elias," she said once. "Yes?" "You strange human," he chuckled. "I've heard that before." Then she said softly, "But good strange." His eyes softened. "Thank you, Shari." But outside the tent, rumors began. Other soldiers didn't like what they saw. A human officer treating an alien captive like an equal, like a woman, some whispered, some watched, and one of them planned to act. The language of silence. The camp was full of noise, boots on mud, engines humming, men shouting over firelight. But inside Elias's tent, there was only silence. Not the cold silence of fear, but the soft quiet of two people, learning to exist together. Shari still didn't speak much. Her human words were few. Elias didn't know her alien tongue at all. And yet, somehow, they began to understand each other, without needing words. One morning, Elias tried to teach her. He held up a cup. "Water." She stared at it, blinking. "Water," he said again, slowly. She hesitated, then repeated softly, "Wa-ter." He smiled. "Yes?" She pointed at her scarf. "This?" "Scarf." "Scarf?" He chuckled. "Close enough." She smiled, a small, cautious smile. It was the first time he had seen it, and just like that, something inside him warmed. In the days that followed, they created a new language. A smile meant, "I trust you." A glance meant, "I understand." A hand gesture meant, "I care." Elias would wince when his leg hurt. She would bring the medicine without asking. Shari would sit quietly, looking lost. He would hand her his last piece of dried fruit. Each act was a sentence. Each silence was a story. They didn't need many words to speak. One cold evening, Elias's fever came back. He tried to hide it, but his hands shook. His face was pale. He collapsed while standing. Shari caught him before he hit the floor. "Elias," she cried. His eyes were distant. "Just tired." She worked quickly, wetting a cloth, cooling his head, searching the box for his medicine. Her fingers trembled. She didn't know the names of the bottles, but she remembered the color, the small red one. He used it before. She held it to his lips. "Drink." He swallowed weakly. Her hand held his the whole night. When he woke, she was still sitting beside him, head on his arm. "You stayed?" he whispered. She nodded. "You could have left." She looked into his eyes. "I not want leave." He closed his eyes again. "Good." Later that week, Shari began speaking more. She used small words, broken sentences. "Sky, look happy today. Your leg, better?" "Fire, warm like sun." Elias listened patiently, always encouraging her. "You're learning fast," he told her. She smiled again. "You, good teacher." She began telling him things, simple things. How her planet had trees that glowed at night. How her people sang during storms. How she used to fly on crystal-winged birds as a child. He didn't understand every word, but he listened. Sometimes he laughed. Sometimes his eyes grew soft, and sometimes he just sat with her, saying nothing, letting her speak into the silence. One night, a storm rolled in. The tent shook. Thunder cracked. Shari flinched at the noise, pulling the blanket over her ears. Elias noticed. "Bad memories?" She nodded. "My city. Fall in storm like this." He looked at her with quiet understanding. "You're safe now." She looked at him. "You? Promise?" He nodded. "I promise." She reached out and gently took his hand. They didn't speak for a long time after that, but they didn't need to. The next day, she drew something in the dirt outside their tent. Circle with two small figures inside. He tilted his head. "What's this?" She smiled shyly. "Us." Elias looked at the drawing for a while. Then he used a stick and added a sun above the circle. She laughed softly. Happy place? Yes, he said. A small one, but real. But not everyone liked what was growing between them. Some of the men had seen them together. Some of them whispered things. She acts like she's free. He treats her like a wife. She was supposed to be a gift, not a guest. One night, someone left a note near Elias's tent. You're forgetting who the enemy is. He burned it in the fire. Shari noticed his silence that night. Something wrong? She asked. Elias shook his head. Some people can't understand kindness. Shari's eyes lowered. They won't hurt me? No, he said. Not while I'm breathing. She placed her hand on his chest. Then safe. He nodded slowly. You're more than safe. And as the fire cracked beside them, their silence spoke louder than words ever could. They tried to take her back. The sky turned gray. It was the kind of gray that made soldiers nervous, the kind that whispered, something is coming. Inside, the tent. Elias was checking his rifle. His leg was still weak, but his hands were steady. Shari sat beside the fire, carefully folding a small flower she had made from old cloth. She had started making things with her hands, tiny birds, soft shapes, memories from her home. She smiled when she looked up at Elias. But the smile didn't last. That morning, the camp received new orders. A transport ship had landed, and with it they came a new officer. Commander Rourke was not a kind man. His boots were always polished, his gloves always clean, and his heart? Cold as ice. He walked through the camp like he owned it. When he reached Elias's tent, he didn't ask permission. He simply pushed the flap aside. His eyes fell on Shari. So, he said, this is the alien. Shari froze. Elias stood, gripping his cane. She has a name. Doesn't matter, Rourke replied. She's been reassigned. To who? Me. Elias stepped forward. No, she stays. Rourke smirked. Orders are orders. She was never yours to begin with. She's a captive, not a companion. Shari's eyes went wide. She stepped behind Elias. She's not going anywhere, Elias said firmly. Don't test me, Lieutenant. Elias didn't blink. You'll have to take her by force. Rourke's smile vanished. We'll see about that. That night, Elias and Shari didn't speak much. She sat close to him. Her hands trembled. She had seen officers like Rourke before. On her planet. In her prison. In her nightmares. You afraid? Elias asked gently. Yes, she whispered. He. Like the others. Elias reached out and took her hand. I won't let him take you. You promise again? I always do. She leaned her head against his shoulder. The next day, soldiers came. 2 guards stood outside the tent. One entered. By command of Central Unit, the guard announced. The alien female is to be relocated. Shari stood up, heart pounding. Elias stepped between them. I said no, the guard sighed. We don't want trouble, sir. Then walk away. The guard tried to push past him. Bad choice. Elias swung his cane hard. Crack. The guard fell, nose bleeding. Shari gasped. Outside, the second soldier rushed in. Elias raised his fists, limping, ready to fight. But before it could go further, another voice rang out. Enough! It was Captain Mirek, an older officer who had fought beside Elias in the early campaigns. What's going on here? He barked. Lieutenant Elias is interfering with orders, the guard said, wiping blood from his mouth. Mirek turned to Elias. Talk to me. She's not a prisoner. She's under my protection, and if I say that protection no longer matters, then I'll protect her anyway. Mirek looked at Shari. She didn't speak, but her eyes begged. After a long silence, Mirek sighed. Fine. Keep her. For now. The guards left. Later that night, Shari cried. Softly, quietly, like She was trying not to disturb the wind. Elias didn't say anything. He just held her hand. She finally spoke, her voice breaking. "Why? You fight for me?" He answered without thinking. "Because no one fought for me when I needed it." She looked up at him. "You were like me?" He nodded. "Different. War. Same pain." The next morning, the camp buzzed with gossip. "Did you hear? Elias beat up a guard for that alien. He's going to get discharged." "No." Captain Mirek backed him up. "Crazy. Everyone was watching now. Judging." But Elias didn't care. He looked at Shari, who was finally standing tall again, her chin lifted slightly higher, and he knew he had done the right thing. That afternoon, Shari did something strange. She stepped outside the tent and waited. When Elias joined her, she pointed to the horizon. "What is it?" he asked. "Your world. Still strange, but I want to see more of it." He smiled. "Then you will." She nodded, and for the first time since the war, she whispered, "I want to live. Not survive. Live." The chains had tried to return, but this time, she had someone who broke them before they could close again. And now, the bond between them was no longer just survival. It was choice. It was hope. It was something far more dangerous to their enemies than war. It was love, growing quietly, in a tent built from pain. The bond between two enemies. Shari stood in front of a broken mirror looking at herself. Her reflection was still strange. Blue skin, deep violet eyes, small markings across her cheeks. She looked alien. She was alien. But now, she didn't feel like a prisoner anymore. She wrapped the scarf Elias had stitched for her around her neck and smiled softly. It didn't match her clothes, but it didn't need to. It was a sign that someone had chosen her. Not for war, not for power, but simply for being her. Outside, Elias was fixing a broken piece of equipment. His leg still ached, but he moved with more energy now, as if something inside him had been lit again. Shari approached and quietly placed a small folded flower on the table beside him. "Gift," she said. Elias looked at it, surprised. "What's it for?" "You protect me, care for me, make me feel alive." He touched the paper flower gently. "Then let me give you something too," he said. He opened a small metal box and pulled out a thin chain. A charm hung at the end, an old coin with a symbol from Earth. He placed it in her hand. "This was my brother's. He gave it to me when I went to war." Shari looked up. "You give to me?" He nodded. "It's yours now. My world, my past, my pain. You've walked through all of it with me. You deserve to carry something real." She held it tight. That moment didn't need more words. Days passed. Shari and Elias worked together like two pieces of the same puzzle. She helped him translate alien maps that other soldiers couldn't read. He taught her how to use human tools. They cooked meals together, cleaned the tent, and even laughed sometimes. One night, Elias lit a small fire outside. The stars were bright above them. Shari sat beside him and pointed to the sky. "That one," she said, "was my home. Before war." He followed her finger. "It's beautiful. Gone now," she whispered. "Humans destroy it. Your people kill many." Elias lowered his head. "I know." There was silence between them for a long moment. Then Shari added, "But you save one." He looked at her. She was watching him, not with hate, but with something else. Forgiveness. "I'm sorry for what we did," Elias said. "And I'm sorry for what my people did too," she replied. "But I not want fight. I just want peace." They reached for each other's hand at the same time. Different species, different blood, but same pain, same wish. and in that quiet starlight something deep and unbreakable formed between them. Others in the camp didn't understand. She was the enemy, they said. He's lost his mind, they whispered. But some began to see what was really happening. Captain Mirek watched them from a distance and said nothing. An old medic once whispered to Elias, "She makes you better, doesn't she?" Elias nodded. "She makes me whole." One evening, while Shari helped with supplies, a young soldier approached her. He was nervous. "You're the alien, right?" She nodded carefully. "My little sister was on the border when your people attacked. She didn't make it." Shari froze. "I hated you," the boy continued. "All of you, but seeing you here with Elias, I don't know anymore." Shari placed the coin necklace over her heart. "I'm sorry," she said. "War hurt all. Maybe no one wins, only lose." The young man blinked, then slowly nodded. "Maybe you're right." That night, Elias and Shari sat quietly in the tent. He handed her a new book, one he thought she might like. "I can't read all," she said shyly. "I'll teach you," Elias replied. She opened the book carefully. The first page had a drawing, a human and an alien standing together facing a sunrise, her eyes filled with tears. "This us?" "Someday, maybe," he said. "If we make it through." Shari leaned against his shoulder. "Then I fight for that day," she whispered. "Together," he said. They were two former enemies. But where others saw a line between human and alien, they had built a bridge, with kindness, with pain, with small gifts and shared silence, and most of all, with the choice to believe in something better than war. The night she chose to stay, the war was finally over. The camp, once full of noise and fire, had grown quiet. Tents were being packed. Orders were changing hands. One by one, soldiers were returning home. Captives were being counted. Documents were being stamped. Shari watched it all from a distance, standing beside Elias's tent, clutching the old scarf he had given her. She should have been happy. Freedom was coming. But her heart felt heavy. That morning, an officer arrived with a data pad. He looked at Elias and said, "The captives are being released. They're being sent back to their surviving colonies." Elias nodded slowly. "And her?" The officer tapped the screen. "She's listed. Ship leaves tomorrow." Elias didn't speak. Shari stood nearby. She had heard everything. That night, she didn't sleep. Elias was packing slowly. He had received his discharge papers. His war was over. He had a small home waiting back on Earth. Nothing special, but quiet. He turned to see Shari watching him. "You'll be safe with your people," he said quietly. She didn't answer. "I know you've missed your world," he added. "You deserve to go back." Still, she said nothing. After a long silence, she whispered, "Will you and be there?" He paused. "No. I'm not allowed to go. Your ship will go far beyond our zones." Shari's hands clenched the scarf tighter. Later, as the night deepened, Shari stepped out into the cold air alone. She walked through the silent camp, past empty fires and sleeping soldiers. She reached the transport area where alien captives were being prepared. There were others like her, scared, angry, confused. A few looked at her. Some recognized her as the one who lived with a human. A woman stepped forward. "You're coming. With us?" Shari looked back over her shoulder. She remembered the warmth of Elias's hand, the way he said her name, the nights they sat watching the stars, the book, the flower, the silence. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." She returned to the tent. Elias was sitting with a map in his lap. He looked up. His eyes asked the question before his lips did. She stepped closer, trembling slightly. "I not go," she said. He blinked. "You're staying?" Shari nodded. "If I go, I have nothing, only pain, only war. You'd be free, he said gently. Shari looked into his eyes. I already am free. You made me free. Not papers. Elias stared at her, heart pounding. You'll have a hard life, he warned. Some people won't accept this. I don't care, she said. I choose my life. I choose you. They sat in silence after that. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had already been said. Their fingers found each other. No pressure, no fear, just peace. The next morning the officer returned. She didn't board the ship, he said, irritated. Elias shrugged. She made her choice. You'll be held responsible. Then hold me. Shari stepped out of the tent, standing beside Elias. Her chin was high. The officer stared at her. Fine, he muttered, but don't expect protection from the system. We'll make our own, Elias said. They left the camp that afternoon, with one bag, with one old scarf, with 2 tired hearts that had found something worth keeping. Months later, on a quiet moon far from the center of war, they built a home. Small, simple, but theirs. Shari grew flowers in the soft gray dirt. Elias taught local kids how to build old engines. They told no one where they came from, only who they were. And sometimes at night, when the wind was soft and the stars clear, Shari would say thank you but for not letting me go, and Elias would reply, you never needed permission to stay. She had once been given as a prize. Now she had chosen her own place, her own name, and her own life. She was no one's captive. She was his, only because she wanted to be. More than just spoils. A soft wind blew over the quiet fields of the outer. Moon children laughed in the distance, chasing glowing insects through the grass. The sun was low, painting the sky with orange and gold. Shari sat on the wooden steps of their small home, watching the light dance across the hills. Her skin shimmered in the fading glow, but her eyes, once full of fear, now held peace. Inside, Elias was fixing a broken kettle, humming a tune she had taught him. It had been 1 year since they left the war behind. And still, not a day passed where someone didn't ask, are you really that alien woman? The one they called spoils of war? She never answered right away. She would smile. Just a little. And wait. The town they lived in was quiet, far from galactic politics and military laws, a place of traders, farmers, and people who had seen too much war. At first they stared, some whispered, some looked at Elias with pity, and at Shari with disgust. But time changed things. Shari began helping in the healing tent. She knew herbs the humans didn't. She whispered to sick children in her language, and somehow they slept better. Elias began teaching machines how to work again. Old trucks, farming drones, power systems. People began to nod when they passed. Some even smiled. One day an old woman handed Shari a small loaf of bread. I don't care what they called you, she said. You're not spoils. You're someone's heart. That evening, a little girl knocked at their door. She had bright, green eyes and a scraped knee. Shari let her in and cleaned the wound carefully. Does it hurt? She asked. The girl shook her head. Not much. Then she looked up curiously. Miss Shari, is it true? Were you given away in the war like a thing? Shari paused. Elias, sitting nearby, looked up. The girl blinked. That's what people say. Shari thought for a long moment. Then in simple words she replied, yes. Once, they called me that. The girl frowned. That's bad. Shari nodded. Yes, very bad. But that's not the end. What happened next? Shari looked at Elias, who was already smiling. I was given, but I was never taken, she said. I was seen, heard, loved, and then I chose to stay. Why? Because he never tried to own me. He gave me something stronger than freedom. The girl tilted her head. What's that? Shari smiled. Home. Later that night, Elias stepped onto the porch beside her. You told her the truth? Yes, Shari replied. She deserved it. He looked at her hands, now resting calmly on her lap. You're stronger than I ever was. She leaned against him. No, she said. We are strong because we didn't break. They watched the stars in silence. One day, soldiers visited the town again, not for war, but for records. A young officer asked for their names. Elias Ward, civilian mechanic. Shari? The officer asked, waiting. She thought for a moment, then said clearly, Shari Ward. The officer blinked. You took his name? No, she said with a soft grin. We made one. He marked the paper and left. In the years that followed, people told stories of their love. Some called it strange. Some called it wrong. But others called it beautiful. Because when the galaxy was full of hate and loss, they had built something no one else could. A quiet life, bond between enemies, a choice to love where hate was easier. One night, long after the war had faded into old books and stories, Shari looked at her hands again, once chained, now free. Not because someone set her free, but because she had chosen who she would become. Elias joined her, placing his hand over hers. They said nothing. They didn't need to, because she was never just a prize, never just a prisoner, and never just a story. She was living proof that even in war, love can grow in the ashes and make two broken people whole.